Nimzowicz's pig and how it connects to time in chess. That's what we'll be speaking about in today's episode. Nimzowitsch said when a pig dies, you not only lose the pig, but all the resources and the food and the water that was also given to that pig. How does that connect to chess and timing? Let me show you an example from beginner games. White plays this way. White goes knight g5, an extremely typical beginner move. They want to attack the pawn on f7. Of course, black castles short, and then many white players go and take on f7, and they exchange two minor pieces for rook and a pawn. This is a perfect illustration of Nimzowicz's pick. White did not only lose those two minor pieces for the pawn, but also lost the investment of time and development for the rook, which made a single move, basically, right? So basically by this exchange, white is also losing time. Going back to Nimzowicz's analogy, you're also losing the food and the water that was given to that pig. Suddenly, it feels like black is so much ahead in development. What was white doing so far, right? Look at the white pieces sleeping on the first rank. What did white do? They made several moves in a row with the same piece over and over again, which is usually a bad policy in the opening, by the way, only to trade off those pieces for the terrible rook, which was sleeping on f8. Look at this. White is investing on this bishop. One full tempo. One full tempo on the knight was invested, right? And suddenly the second full tempo invested on the same piece, only to exchange all this valuable tempo for that rook on f8. That's exactly why when you look at a position like this, you're like, why was not playing any moves so far? What was he doing for the entire game while black was busy developing their army in this position? Black has a completely winning advantage literally in this position. Also, given that they continue developing their pieces, they continue developing their pieces with moves like d5, and good luck defending this position with white. You can't even roll f3 because of this bishop. Just look how black pieces, minor pieces, are dominating this game. They can even go knight d4, for example, here and attack the pawn on c2. Just look at the time advantage that was given to black as a result of the initial trade of two minor pieces for the rook. It's white to play in this position. What are your observations so far? When you look at a position like this, what strikes you at first? Folks, what strikes me as a coach in this position is it seems like white has made 10 moves in the opening while black only made 4 moves, don't you think? It feels like black played bishop c5, bishop e3, h5, and queen f6 so far. But if you look at the white's position, e4 was played, d4, d5, knight c3, bishop e3, queen c2, f3, g3, king g2. It looks like white is so much ahead in development so far, don't you think? So how did we come to this position? If I go one ply before, you see in this position, black player played the move knight e3 check and only allowed the bishop on c1, which never made a single move so far, to trade itself off for the knight, which moved 3 times so far. It's already the first sign for black to have avoided this trade, because as a result of a single exchange, white has connected their rooks. White has forced black to make one more move with the bishop, and suddenly we arrived to this position where it just feels like black made only 4 moves so far. And if you go a little bit back in this position, you see, if you go a little bit backwards in this position, we see that black is playing with the bishop over and over again. For example, bishop c5, queen c2 defends against the mate on f2, by the way, knight h6, they want to get the knight out, but instead of castling short or developing the bishop on c8, black is playing with the knight over and over again. And after bishop d6, one more move with the bishop, by the way, black is neglecting chess principles, opening principles. By playing bishop d6, they're also hindering the bishop on c8, because now black cannot play d6 anymore. And after white stops the threat by g3, black keeps on making pawn moves while neglecting their queen side altogether. White chases the knight, and black makes the bishop move again with bishop c5, and then comes this check. It feels like black has made so many moves with the bishop and the knight while ignoring their queen side, and of course white should utilize this time advantage by taking and arriving in this position. Here white has almost a winning advantage, mostly because of time, because of development. Black, by playing like this, gave a clear developmental lead to white, and that's exactly why, by the way, folks, in this position knight e3 was a mistake. Black should have played the move knight e5 in this position. At least, right, at least they would have stopped that bishop to trade itself off that easily for that knight and connecting their rooks this way. This knight is also stopping white from pushing e5 and opening up basically the e file, because there's still a king that is living on e8. Black needs to play so cautiously here in this position to be able to get something from this position. For example, d6, right? Finally, they want to get this bishop into the game. f4 is right now stopped because of knight g4, right? Black is just in the game. They have some stability at least in this position. And the bishop is still here on c1, and white needs to wait some tempo, right, to connect the rooks. So, given that alternative line, this also now becomes apparent, right? Why this was a clear mistake, basically. Here, white has so many moves. For example, knight b5 is a good idea. I just want to use my little development to attack your weaknesses. So after knight b5, if they go bishop b6, we have a very nice move. You can stop the video, folks. Is there a way for us to exploit our lead in development? And yes, e5 is a great move, chasing the queen. If you take the pawn, now we understand, right? Developmental advantage, our rooks are connected, and we are catching your king in the center of the board. So here, white starts to utilize the time advantage. And after f4, full domination. Look at the white pieces. Look how restricted the black pieces are in this position. And basically, white has a clear winning advantage in this position purely by positional evaluation. Just look at this, right? It looks like white was making so many moves while black was waiting. So the pig died and lots of resources was given for that pig in this case, right? You might think about this knight as a pig and only to be traded off for the bishop, which never made a single move basically. This is such a big beginner mistake because they want to play with the same piece over and over and over again. It's white to play in this position, folks. Please tell me the most logical move for white using chess principles, opening principles. What are those principles? Fight for the center, safeguard your king, and rapidly develop your pieces, right? Don't neglect sleeping pieces. Get everyone into the game as soon as possible. If you think logically, that's what you want to achieve in the opening. So, given this orientation phase, folks, tell me one good move for white in this position. Yes, there's a sleeping beauty on b1. So knight e2, right? Doesn't require any calculation. My knight is a much better piece on d2 than on b1. Maybe from there, you can jump to this beautiful post on c4 and put pressure on a5, but also on the weak pawn on d6, and so on, right? This move is clearly the best move for white, given you already castled your king, given time has come to develop your knight in this position. But beginners have a hard time finding and making such moves in the opening. They look at a knight on e3, oh, what a beautiful piece I'm seeing on e3. Let me post that knight on f5. That's how they play chess. And this move was also chosen in the actual game. If you think about that, how many moves do you think white has spent on the on the knight on e3 to come to that square? Think about that. The knight's initial square was on f3, right? At least 1, 2, 3, 4. So white already has invested 4 full tempo to come to this position with the knight, correct? And look what he's doing. He's making the knight move again. He wasted 5 full tempo with this knight. 5 full tempi was spent on a single pig or a knight. You put so much resources on the piece only to be chopped off by the bishop, which never made a single move. Terrible. It looks like white has wasted 4 full tempi, right? It looks like I'm handing you in a golden tray those 5 tempi that was spent on that knight. Is it worth it? No, folks. It's not worth it. Yes, you have the bishop pair right now, but spending 4 full tempi with a piece was not worth it. Your knight is still terribly stuck on b1. You're also giving black options of taking the full center with moves like d5. And suddenly it looks like what was white doing for the entire game, right? You're missing all the tempi that was spent on that knight. Isn't it beautiful? When you look at a position like this, okay, what's going on here? What did white play so far? Why are all the pieces still stuck on the first rank? Well, he was playing with knight over and over again. So this example basically will fix those big process issues for beginners. You will start to develop all of your pieces in your games, in the opening. You won't neglect the final piece that is waiting on b1, for example. And second of all, you'll be much more cautious in exchanging of a piece that already moved several times so far, right? Because purely from a developmental perspective, yes, black is very happy to chop that knight off without making another move with the bishop. They somehow gain tempo in this case, right? Time is very difficult to measure in chess, folks, but that's one way of measuring it. When you look at a position like this, it's like, what happened to white? What were they doing in the opening state so far? Why are they still playing with knight on b1? And so on, right? So you can gain information. Or when you go back to this first game, for example, right? Like, look at this, as we discussed. What was white doing so far? When you see a position like this, what? Like black was developing their pieces and white was just doing nothing, it turns out, right? So you see, again, very striking example of the value of time in chess and how you can get punished by breaking the opening principles and making the same piece move again and again. Beginners like to play with their pretty pieces, right? Oh, I have a pretty bishop here. I have a pretty knight on f3. Let me move my beautiful piece one more time, right? One more time. I want to make this piece move and do something instead of looking at their ugly pieces lying on the first rank, right? Exactly the same thing was going on here. White looked at this beautiful knight on e3. Look how much time and resource I invested on this piece. It looks beautiful. Controls d5 can jump to f5. Thus, they made a move with that knight again, only to be chopped off by the bishop on c8. To consolidate this lesson, folks, I will show you an instructive game from Masters Practice. I think Johan Hesten also covered this game in his beautiful book, Mastering Opening Strategy. Alright, folks, so I want you to focus in this game the black knight on f6 and how many moves they will make with this knight over and over again, okay? This will connect to our team. White wants to attack the knight with early g5. Thus, black is already avoiding this g5 tempo, let's say. But they are also wasting time with this knight. White develops their army. One more knight move. Look at this. Already, this knight has moved 3 times, while the rest of the army is still sleeping on their barracks. White prepares to castle long. White doesn't neglect any more time. White prepares for that. Knight c4 hits the bishop on e3. That knight has already moved 4 times so far, by the way, folks, right? So my question is this. Do you rather keep your bishop by playing bishop f2, let's say, or bishop c1 to cover b2, or do you ignore that and do you castle long in this position? If I give you 3 choices, how would you play this position? You're a great player if you say, fine, let's exchange those pieces because I keep on developing my pieces, I make the most natural developing move, and if you now go ahead and take my bishop, how many moves did that knight make for this exchange? 5, right? Let's count this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You wasted 5 full tempi with that knight. My bishop only moved once. So in some sense, black lost 4 full tempi in this position to come here. And that's so striking, right? Look at this position, folks. Look at the entire board. It looks like black was doing nothing the entire time, right? Also, they made a couple of pawn moves like this. It looks like black is completely neglecting their development. And this will be so apparent. And now compare and contrast that with white's beautiful development. Also central control, of course, right? Menacing. It looks like a menacing position for white. Yes, black has the bishop pair, but who cares? Because timing is more important, right? King safety is more important. Your king is living in the center and white will open up lines in the center of the board. Let's discuss this position, folks. Once you are so much better developed, then what is your goal in terms of strategy? You want to open up the center. Also, the enemy king is living in the center, right? So you want to find a way to rip open the center as soon as possible, to use your time advantage. And which move does that? Which move looks promising for white? Yes, folks, e5 is a beautiful move. You're also activating your bishop this way. You want to open up the d file this way, right? The most energetic move by far. In the actual game, they took on d4. If they play d5, folks, can you tell me that striking and energetic move for white that punishes black's chess crimes? And you're a great player if you found the sacrifice bishop takes d5. White is sacrificing the bishop to get this beautiful knight on d5 and to catch the king in the center of the board. Only for 2 pawns, you got yourself this extremely strong attacking position. You gain tempo on the queen as well. That's very important. After queen d8 comes the next phase. You take that knight first, and what do we play in this position, folks? Can you see the alignment between the rook and the queen? Yes, you go knight f6 check, and black is losing material as a result. That's basically shows us, right? This beautiful line shows us that it was already a difficult position for black. Queen b8 is the other try. But comes my next question to you. What should white play in this position, folks? Can you see the alignment now on the e-file between the king and your queen? How do you exploit that? Please stop the video and find a great move for white in this position. Yes, knight f6 check is so beautiful. Look at that. If the knight is captured, your queen is joined the attack this way. And after knight e5, well, there are many moves here, but I very much like knight f3 as well. You want to capture on e5 with your knight on the next turn. You don't want to trade the queens this way, of course, right? But knight f3 and the entire thing is collapsing. Look, you caught the king in the center of the board. You used your time advantage to exploit this factor of black losing so much time with that knight. So since d5 wasn't working for black, black took on d4 in the actual game. After queen takes d4, folks, we come to a critical moment. Because again, I'm putting so much pressure on your backward pawn that I'm forcing you, let's say, to play the move d takes d5. If you play d5 again, the same sacrifice. Bishop takes d5, and look how white is transforming the time advantage to something much more tangible. Black pieces cannot even move in this position, folks. Just look at this. e6 is coming, everything is ripped apart, everything is collapsing for black. If you take on e6, then obviously knight e7 and white just wins. Otherwise, the queen has to retreat. I will take on g7 next turn. It's a full carnage and disaster for black in this position, folks. That's how you catch the king in the center. D takes e5, f takes e5, and now already here it becomes evident that black is facing issues. They play bishop c5, folks. I want you to stop the video. Please, black is ready for castling short. You don't want to allow that, right? When the enemy king is in the center, you have to use your resources to find those tactics, find those ideas to convert your time advantage. Only forward moves must be calculated. Forcing moves must be checked very carefully, and you're a great player if you found the move bishop c6 check. Bam! What a beautiful move is this. You're stopping the black king from castling short. If they take for the queen, this becomes easy to see. Queen d8 is a beautiful mate. Thus, bc is a must, right? What else can you do in this position? Otherwise, I will take your bishop with check. bc is a must. But then comes queen takes e5, and you're preventing castling short. Look at this. Terrible bishop is also given to black. Your queen is amazing. Knight e4 to d6 is coming. Positional evaluation, please. Positional judgment, please. Much safer king, much better pieces, right? White is completely winning in this position. You can't even do anything, basically. Just queen e7 collapses because of queen takes e6, and the game is over. Otherwise, I mean, what are you doing? Bishop d7, I can even do this. Knight e4 to d6, and the game is completely over, as far as I can see. Maybe there are even better moves, right? So it's a complete disaster for black in this position, and white earned it. White completely earned this advantage because of black's making the same knight move again and again and again in this case. So it was a beautiful exchange for white to allow this trade on e3. In this sense, history also matters in chess, right? Like, given how black has spent all this time with that knight is very relevant for this exchange actually in this position, in some sense. You don't want to lose more time in this position. Yeah, bishop c1 is also maybe okay for black, for white, right? but right, your time advantage won't be felt because you can't even castle long on the next turn. You need to waste more tempo in this position to chase that knight away, and you're giving time to black to consolidate their position. Thus, it's a welcome trade for white. Even though it looks like you're giving away your good bishop, look what you're getting in return. It's always give and take in chess, and this example nicely shows us in a more complex way of what we covered in today's episode. Don't you think, folks? And again, how you play with time advantage and how you catch the king in the center, that was also a very useful lesson. Hopefully, you got the right lessons from this. And again, I'm expecting your feedback on YouTube as always. Do you have similar problems in your games? Do you also tend to make the same piece move again and again and again? Was this a problem at some point in your chess life? And how did you fix this problem? I think looking at those instructive games is a great way to actually fix those problems, because even I, as a beginner, right, I used to go like this to trade my minor pieces for that rook because it looks like, oh, the rook is a strong piece. I'm also getting a pawn for that. Let's go for it, right? But once you look at exactly what's going on here, once you search for your own mental models, then you start to avoid such ideas out of principle. That was the main point of Nimzowicz's pick that was given in his book My Praxis, but also in My System, that hopefully will give you more meaning when it comes to piece trades. And as I witnessed many times as a coach, people tend to neglect their knights like that for a long time, and they play with their pretty pieces for a long time. Please compare the chess prime knight f5 with a beautiful move knight d2 in this case, and please don't let your pieces down. Don't play with those terrible knights. Bring everyone to the party, please, folks. That's a great strategic advice that I can give you also when it comes to the opening strategy. If you like this video, please give me a like and subscribe, folks. I'm here to help you support in your journey of chess improvement. Always give me feedback. I am responding to each and every one of you on YouTube. Please give me feedback about this lesson, and I will catch you on the next episode. Bye-bye.